Okay, I'd like to welcome everybody to today's webinar. It's about the noon hour, so we'd like to get started. So we have a lot of great information to go over today. If you do have questions throughout the program, I'd like to ask you to please either email myself or Natalie. It would be included in your response from your registration Eventbrite. So if you do have any questions, please reach out, technical questions. As we go throughout also, there's a Q&A pod that's either at the bottom or the top of your screen, depending on which device you're using. We'd ask you to please enter questions in there throughout the day, the program. That way, George Stark may ask the panelists as many as we can towards the end of the program. With that, and also one last reminder, I'd like to follow you guys. If you'd like to follow us on Twitter and join in the discussion, our handle is energy_briefing. While we're going to highlight 6 great organizations today, we'd ask you to please send other organizations. We know there's numerous out there, and we're going to put a resource page onto our Think About Energy website. So with that, I'd like to turn it over to Mr. George Stark from Cabot Oil and Gas to take it away, sir. George.
Good afternoon, Matthew, and good afternoon to everyone who's taken this event in online today. I really thank you all for taking the time to join us. For those of you who are familiar, Cabot has been involved with Think About Energies for the last 5 years. And we have this brand where we're constantly trying to get people to really pause and think about how energy impacts their daily lives. But what we need to do now is we need to stop and we need to think about how we can help in our daily lives. The energy industry, what we do, it's critical and it's important, but really, we need to make certain that the community overall is being helped. So these events have been designed historically to promote conversation, to get people thinking about what's happening. Ultimately, we want to raise awareness. And one of the panelists asked, setting this up, what's the goal today? And the goal is really for us to take away that there are great institutions out there helping. We need to figure out how we can help them because they're doing the most good right now. So really, it's about raising awareness and ultimately a call to action. If you're able to help, maybe today you'll find out a new way in which you can help. But in order to know how to help, to know what's going on, you need to hear from those folks who are out there on the front lines. And we thought today, by having this lunchtime opportunity, you could hear from 6 experts in the field. And we're going to start, again, it's a great list, but we're going to start with Jane Clements-Smith from Feeding Pennsylvania. It's a great organization. She'll walk you through what they're doing from a statewide perspective. Then we'll go to Joe Arthur, who's from the Central Pennsylvania Food Bank, and hear how they're helping and aiding throughout the community. Additionally, we have Gene Brady with us. Gene is, again, someone that Cabot has worked closely with, very highly respected in the outreach industry, and he is with CEO Weinberg. Then we're going to pivot to Cristine Clayton, who is with Commonwealth Management, and she'll walk you through, from a statewide standpoint, what foundations are able to do to help aid and assist at a time like this, and maybe it will give you some thoughts to how you can partner in that notion. Lastly, we don't want to overlook the education areas that are needed. What we're seeing is a lot of rural school districts need help with computers. They need help with Wi-Fi. We want to give you this opportunity to understand what's really missing out there. And so we'll hear from Josh Whiteside from, from Education Partnerships. He'll walk us through that. And then lastly, we'll hear from Lisa Hannum. Lisa's someone that I've known in my past. And again, what we're trying to make certain is we cover all. So she represents the Domestic Violence Services of Southwestern Pennsylvania. Again, an organization that's out there on the front helping. Because at the end of the day, what we know is we want to relieve stress, we want to relieve anxiety, and ultimately we want to help. So with that, Jane, I'm going to turn this over to you to kick us off. Thank you so much for being here.
Thanks, George, and thanks, Matt, for having me. So I'm Jane Clements-Smith, Executive Director of Feeding Pennsylvania, and we are the State Association of Feeding America Food Banks. So we represent the 9 major Feeding America food banks covering all 67 counties, as you can see there on the map. Our food banks serve as large major distribution warehouses that distribute food through a network of about 2,700 different agencies. That's like your food pantries, your soup kitchens, and shelters. And typically before COVID-19, we distributed 160 million pounds of food annually to about the 1.5 million Pennsylvanians who are struggling with hunger. However, since COVID-19 became apparent in Pennsylvania, we've seen a major increase in need coming to our food pantries, and that's apparent from the 1.4 million people who have applied for unemployment since mid-March. And to put that into perspective, March of 2019, 100,000 people applied for unemployment. So we are seeing astronomical amount of people applying. So we quickly, as Feeding Pennsylvania, joined a statewide task force with agencies from the Wolf administration. And then we've also been working with our Pennsylvania Department of Agriculture to work with the federal government on USDA commodities. So in changing the way we do business, we've had to look at how we can follow the CDC guidelines for social distancing and also keeping the products that we serve to the people in our community safe. So we started shifting the way we distribute food by, for example, boxing some of these commodities. And you'll hear a little bit from one of my members, Joe Arthur in Central Pennsylvania, about how they're doing that. And then we've also started doing drive-through distribution. So people will drive through, pop their trunk, we'll drop the box of food in, it'll last them a few days. And we're doing those all around Pennsylvania. Food access, I would say, is our #1 issue right now. We are having a harder time finding family-sized packages of food. Every time people do this panic buying at the grocery stores, it is clogging up the system when it comes to food, not even just donations. We're trying to purchase the food. Shippers and manufacturers are scrambling, trying to meet the needs of retailers. And that means ultimately the orders we have in, millions of dollars of orders, are getting kicked to the end of the line. So we are continuing to, thanks to many of the businesses that are in the energy industry and all different kinds of industries, we're continuing to take those donations because we're also seeing an uptick in the price of food. And we're continuing to try to reevaluate the way we serve the people that we already have been serving for many, many years, but also this new group of people that may be out of work for an uncertain amount of time. And we're doing that, like I said, through this network of food banks. And Joe and Jean will be next to tell you a little bit more about what they're seeing on the ground floor. So I'll yield to Joe now.
Hey, thank you, Jane. And just very quickly want to thank George and the Cabot team for allowing us to be on this platform. This is very helpful. Jane had alluded there to the support that we're asking for from our companies, from people in general, from foundations. Very necessary because most of the food that we're providing in even more abundance now than ever, we need to pay for, and it's a constricted food supply, as Jane mentioned, particularly for shelf-stable goods. So I'll take a little deeper dive on what it looks like on the ground. So you can see on the map on the screen, Central Pennsylvania Food Bank serves pretty much the whole Susquehanna Valley and a little bit more. And of the millions of pounds that Jane described that the Feeding Pennsylvania member food banks provide, Central Pennsylvania, by virtue of its geography, provides about half of that poundage. So generally about 60 million pounds of food. The last month, we just checked our numbers as of yesterday, which was the 15th of April. Our poundage is actually up by 50%, actually a little bit more than that. So that's a couple million extra pounds for us, but 50% is a huge increase with pretty constricted supply lines. So how we do that, we have a partner agency network, like all Feeding America food banks and Feeding Pennsylvania food banks. And about 65% of our partners on the ground, think of pantries and soup kitchens and shelters, are operational right now. So we actually feel pretty good about that because they're all volunteer based. And in the COVID-19 world, they had to greatly change their protocol, just as we have back at the regional food bank. The recent governor orders around masks and social distancing and stay at home, we are impacted by all of that. So we need to do that here at our hubs. I'm in my office at the hub, which is actually more of a command center right now with the limited staff. We're not packing any boxes here. In order to do this right on the scale that we need to do it, we have 170,000 square feet, and Jane had mentioned we're working with state agencies. That's how we've obtained that. FEMA is paying for the space, and that allows us to spread out with packing lines with volunteers and do all of the protocol, all of the spacing we need, all of the sanitizing and cleaning, and everything that we do. To give you a close look at that, even when our teams take a break, they have to sit on chairs that are at least 6 feet apart, facing the same direction. When they pack, they're facing the same direction, and on and on. So the protocol is pretty tight. It's actually very tight for us. And we've learned how to operate that way very well. And we've taught our partners how to do that as well. So we are up to speed on all of that. I will take a note real quickly to kind of dive in with the school aspect. George had mentioned that his spouse is a teacher. So they're out of school right now, and you have all the challenges at home, and I see George smiling. But the challenges in the communities and at the schools, what about the children that are on free and reduced lunch that need those meals? So that's actually happening at our school districts. And how we're walking alongside of them is, if the child is food insecure, so is the family. So we're providing the crisis response boxes that Jane described to our school districts, and volunteers that are actually bringing those boxes to the parking lots for the schools, and providing trunk service, basically providing those boxes to the family, no touch, to help them through these difficult times. So we're really proud of what the Pennsylvania school, the whole school apparatus is doing. And really, we believe that Pennsylvania as a whole is doing amazing work. I personally am on a national council for Feeding America, and not all states have been as proactive and responsive as ours. So I want to give a shout out to the Wolf administration and really to our whole General Assembly for the amazing and quick work they've been doing, getting the national leadership to provide what Pennsylvania needs to be able to do a robust response. And we're leveraging that as we go. So I'll leave the remainder for Q&A. But again, challenging times, but just know that the Feeding Pennsylvania food banks and our food bank are there for people. And all of our information that you see on the screen is available to the general public. And our helplines are very, very busy and growing by the day. So we're proud of our work, but letting folks know that we're there to help them. So I'll turn it over to Gene at CEO Weinberg Food Bank.
Thank you, and thank you to Cabot. Thanks to George Stark and all the people at Cabot who have been great partners. They're wonderful corporate citizens in Pennsylvania, and again, stepping up during what is an unprecedented situation that we're all experiencing. Many of the things that both Jane and Joe talked about, because we are a regional food bank, we do as well. So I wanted to focus on if in our area that we serve Susquehanna, Wyoming, Lackawanna, and Luzerne County, and you would see up on the screen our website. For people in our communities, and this would be similar to any food bank, they can go to that website and they can do a number of things. They can first, if they're in need, they can go and find the closest food pantry to them. It's GPS based, and that way they can get out and get food if that's needed. Secondly, they can volunteer. Once again, go to the website. They'll see a button to click to volunteer, which would entail helping us to do packing and so many of the things that we have to do, these the safe distancing kind of distributions we're doing and such, all take, and the wonderful efforts of people in Pennsylvania. And finally, for people interested in donating, they can go to the site and make a donation to help with this effort. So we've been very busy and we continue to do that. I would also say when it comes to food, that people should be aware they can also apply online at www.compass.state.pa.us for the SNAP benefits program that would be available. But for many of the citizens that we're dealing with, we're seeing people for the first time that are unemployed, waiting for a paycheck, waiting for the assistance they're going to get for the federal government, and they've never gone through this before. So this informational session, I think it's wonderful for people, hopefully, to find out how they can get help and how we're working together to get through this with all the food banks in Pennsylvania and with a lot of organizations that are there to guide people during these times. So I want to say that we have member organizations. We too work with school districts. We work with all of our member organizations. Our regional food bank is a building that distributes out to people in the community, or I'm sorry, organizations in the community. People don't come to that regional food bank. So we ship food to people. One of the latest things that we're doing through the American Dairy Association, who is giving us free milk, is we've started a process to give that milk. They're bringing tractor trailer loads that have about 10,000 half gallons of milk, and we're redistributing that to throughout our service territory. Just another way of trying to help people in need. So I would encourage people to get involved, and if you need help, to certainly reach out and to help. And I would also again thank Cabot for their putting this information session on to help so many people.
Hi, I'm Cristine Clayton with Commonwealth Charitable Management. We manage charitable funds and grants on behalf of donors across Pennsylvania. We're a grant maker working with targeted recipients to ensure that the charitable grants that donors are making are having the valuable impact that they want. We use multiple vehicles to ensure that the donors are able to respond consistently and quickly to needs within their communities. We're working with individuals and companies that want to contribute to the greater good, whether that requires long-term planning with a fund or immediate relief during a crisis. We're able to provide that service. For example, one of our newest funds, the Susquehanna County Coronavirus Assistance Fund, is to address needs within the community, such as rent, utility, food assistance for individuals. We're also working with nonprofits in the area to administer a new fund that has an expanded focus that includes the needs of small businesses. In addition to managing the fund you'll see on the slide, we also manage school district foundations and a charitable granting process on behalf of corporations to help them target the areas where they want their assistance to go. We also administer the Educational Improvement Tax Credit Program. This allows us to make scholarships to students in preschool, kindergarten through 12th grade, and also grants directly to benefit public schools. We're the select vendor for EITC administration for the Pennsylvania Bankers Services Corporation. We've been working with a lot of banks throughout the state that want to help the school districts right now. During this time of great uncertainty, our staff has been working with those targeted districts to determine what type of assistance is most needed. Thanks to companies like Cabot Oil and Gas and many of our banks, they are providing assistance right now, from computers to software to internet accessibility in rural areas, all to help enable that mobile learning. We're lucky that our donors have been able to step in, and we're more than happy to help any EITC donor, guide them through the process so they can also help. I'm sure Josh has a better insight into what the needs are in a school district. I'll hand it over to Josh.
Thanks so much for that beautiful segue, Cristine. And thanks everyone else. Thank you to my fellow panelists for the work that you're doing right now. If our students are hungry, I think it's safe to assume that they're going to be ineffective learners. So thank you to my fellow panelists. And thank you, George, for putting this on and helping spread awareness of some of the work that we're doing here. So my name is Josh Whiteside. I'm the executive director at an organization called the Education Partnership. Most of the viewers here, unless they're in our Southwestern PA service area, they're probably unaware of what we do. So let me take a second to address that. We are a surplus redistribution organization. Our mission is to provide school and classroom resources for teachers and students in under-resourced schools in Southwestern PA. What I mean by under-resourced schools is any school in our service area that has minimally a 70% student body that is eligible for the National School Lunch Program can apply to be part of our program and receive product from our organization that we procure nationwide. When you look at our 7-county service area in Southwestern PA, when I'm talking about only schools that meet that 70% or greater threshold of students enrolled in the National School Lunch Program, there's about 250 of them. Currently, the Education Partnership is partnered with 139 of those schools. So there's a lot of work still to be done, but right now the Education Partnership is able to put resources into the hands of about 4,500 teachers and through them about 55,000 students. So to answer your question earlier, George, about I don't know if it's a good thing or a bad thing if your wife is a teacher, I can assure you that it is overwhelmingly a good thing that your wife is a teacher. The teaching profession as a whole, I think as a society, we've probably undervalued that position. And I think a lot of what we can do right now is be a voice for teachers, stand up for them, make sure that they understand, that we understand the difficulties that they're facing right now. And that's not to say that everyone isn't facing difficulties, but I think teachers have really been faced with an enormous task of pivoting the education of our youth into a remote setting. And there's a lot of weeds that go along with that. The Education Partnership, we operate 3 main programs. I don't want to get too much into the weeds, but when I say school supplies, it's all of the basic needs that students have. So it's pens, pencils, crayons, but it's a lot of things that schools need as well that often don't make the budget. So it's new desks, new office furniture, home goods to make the classroom fun, engaging, comfortable. It's custodial supplies, it's hygiene items. Really, it's anything that it's going to take to run a school. And then lastly, we now have a high-tech STEAM lending library where we can lend out high-tech resources for our schools. I think what we're seeing now with the COVID pandemic is this focus on the digital divide, and I'm sure we're going to get some good questions about that. And yes, that is an enormous hurdle for low-income schools. But I think when you're talking about the population of primary school students, elementary school students, you know, I think the conversation still needs to be about those basic school supplies and not quite the iPads and the Chromebooks. So we're trying to address the issues from both sides of that spectrum. But right now, the Education Partnership is able to support those 55,000 students. We're much smaller than a lot of my peers here on the call. This year, we'll support to the tune of about $6 million worth of product. A majority of that comes donated from partners, but then we do our own purchasing when we're able to as well. So with that intro, I'm sure I'm over my 3-minute time limit. I want to kick it over to Lisa from Domestic Violence Services.
I'm Lisa. I'm the Executive Director of Domestic Violence Services of Southwestern PA. And like Josh, I'm in the southwestern part, or the most southwestern part of the state of Pennsylvania. And our mission of our agency is to increase awareness about the issue of domestic violence, to empower those who are victimized by providing safe and effective services, and to work for social change to eventually eliminate domestic violence from our society. And because domestic violence is about power and control, I think you'll agree that most of us feel anything but in control right now. So needless to say, this situation is no doubt increasing stressors in every household, even those of healthy relationships. So you can imagine what's going on behind the doors of homes that are domestic violence situations. But what I want the audience to know today, that during this global crisis, our staff remains on the front lines to help anyone at all who needs to escape an abusive situation. And thank you, Cabot Oil. Thank you, George, Natalie, Matt. Thank you for providing this opportunity for us to all talk and maybe share some information and get some information out there.
Well, Lisa, thank you for wrapping up that overview. And I'll stay with you because, again, we'll go to the entire list of experts. And it really hopefully shows the audience the spectrum, the broad spectrum of need. And again, we don't want to have anyone overlooked because you hit it on its head. The stressors are there. So, you know, we've heard, and we're going to go back to the likes of Jean and Jane to talk about their specific needs. Now, I have to imagine, though, at a time like now, when you can't do all the shopping that you normally would do, gift cards to Target would be helpful to an association like yours, a group like yours, that then you'd be able to figure out how best to apply that. So if you can just help the audience that's watching, whether they're in Southwestern Pennsylvania or Northeast or Central Pennsylvania, tell me about how folks can actually make certain that their efforts to help you actually reach you. What would be the best way now?
Okay, thanks, George. That's a great question. Needless to say, it's very hard to social distance when you're in a shelter that has 5 beds in 1 bedroom. So although we're providing all the services that we have been providing, we're doing it in a modified manner. So you hit it on the head, George, when you said gift cards. That is one thing, because with gift cards, especially to a store that has all the items that one might need, you know, personal care items, groceries, things like that. So it's a one-stop shopping kind of thing, whether that be a Target or even a Sheetz or, you know, something like that. Those types of things would help, because we can get the gift card much more easily to the client than we have the capacity to have the client come to us because of the social distancing and the lockdown. So gift cards are small, they're easy to get. So, you know, those can be mailed to the organization. We need unrestricted funds right now in order to do the work that we're doing, because clearly every day a new problem comes up as far as how to do business. So we've got a GoFundMe page going on where our local community foundation is giving us a dollar for dollar match. So if we raise 50 grand, they're going to come up with 50,000 for us. So, you know, that's mainly what we need right now, because historically, like Jean said, we've never been in this situation before. So you never know what the next day is going to hold.
And I want to come back to your point. We've not been in a situation like this. And again, to those listening, you know, the goal is to look at what's available at your own personal level, at your company level, at a group association. You may be a member of the Society for Petroleum Engineers and you want to do something collaboratively. You may be a member of a church and you're looking for how best to do that. At the end of today, that's really what we're trying to promote. But have you understand that, again, there are several needs going unmet. There are easy things, I say easy in the sense that you can do that gift card. We hear so much about the need for still supporting our local businesses at this time when they're closed down. And again, I'm familiar that, you know, gasoline cards are something that would be needed for you. And it doesn't end with you. You know, it's the same thing that Gene Brady needs and Joe Arthur. That idea, you know, you've got people who now are sitting in a line waiting to get food into their trunk, but they're running their engine at the same time. So I'm going to wrap up with you, Lisa, because is that something additionally that you need?
Absolutely. And that was part of the reason I brought up Sheets, because you can not only go in and get a quick sandwich or snacks to stock up, depending on where you're staying, but you can also get gas. So yes, because transportation is an issue. We're trying to follow the rules that everyone else has been told to follow. But when we have a client that doesn't have the means to have gasoline in their car, then we're in a position where we need to transport. And so then again, we're in a closed vehicle and we're doing our best to try to keep everyone safe. So yes, gift cards would be greatly appreciated for gasoline.
Understood. Lisa, thank you so much. And again, the benefit is this broadcast is going to be available afterwards. So again, there's going to be a great opportunity for people to learn more about your organization, as well as Josh's organization and Education Partnership. Josh, if I could bring you in, because again, we wanted to make certain that we understand that food insecurity is the number one. We are going to hit that hard today, but there are those that have more of an inclination to help in a rural area with schools. I'm imagining, Josh, that you could see the need for, you mentioned the supplies. Gift cards would be helpful likewise to you, sir? What would be the best way for an individual to help you, Josh?
So I think there's a couple ways that you can help support us, either directly or indirectly. There's some really easy ways. I know everyone's facing some issues right now, but I would say the easiest way that you could support us would be to support the teachers in the area right now. You know, kind of what I said before. Let's practice an extra level of patience, a level of compassion, some understanding, and let's make sure that we're doing everything we can just to let teachers know that we recognize the difficulties that they're facing. I would say from a macro level, another very easy non-expense thing to do would be to let your legislators know that education funding cannot be a shortfall of this entire circumstance. I'm sure that this is going to affect the state budget. You know, people smarter than me are estimating somewhere between $500 million, you know, up to $3-4 billion of shortfall. It's imperative that we're communicating out to legislators. Legislators, if you are in the room right now, it's imperative that we're not cutting education. It's only going to exacerbate an already extreme problem we have going on. I would say, third, if people are looking to directly support, yes, gift cards are a wonderful resource, but I would actually even say if you're going to support a cause like the Education Partnership, I would say cash is king. It really is. You know, we don't turn away any donation. Pencils are wonderful. Notebooks, binders, all of that is extremely useful. I always say, I wish people thought about school and office supplies the way that they thought about clothing. Whenever they are cleaning out their closets every spring, no one would ever say, I'm just going to throw all my clothes away. They donate them. I would encourage people to think that same way whenever they are cleaning out their offices or whatnot.
Well, Josh, just to stay with that, because again, you know, we're looking at the opportunity for an individual to make a donation. We're looking at small businesses that are partnered with the likes of the energy industry. I mean, we're blessed that folks like Williams have set aside $1 million to the effort. But we're trying to come in that low end also to make certain that, you know, an engineering firm still has the opportunity. And what we've seen is, and again, I shared with you that my wife's a teacher, this idea of supplies. You hit it on its head. Pencils, paper, things that may not be being utilized today in your office because you may not be working, but as packets get made and get delivered, there's a run on paper. So again, we're trying to show things that are easy. Of course, we love the fact that Williams had come in at $1 million to help at this time, but that's that goal for companies to think about, wait a minute, I may have an extra ream of paper here that I could donate, because like I said, I know my wife, because of the work they're doing, they see the need. So appreciate you giving us that opportunity and that insight. I'm going to tie you in with the likes of Cristine, because what we've seen from a Cabot oil and gas standpoint is programs like EITC allow us to direct dollars, but by partnering with a foundation, it also gives us some flexibility. So hopefully a takeaway out of this is, and again, it would benefit Lisa likewise, is to create that partnership with the foundation. So when there is an opportunity like this or an emergency like this, people have a way to give back. So if I could, Cristine, if you could help a little bit with the understanding of how you've been more flexible this year with your EITC and EIO dollars to ensure that schools across the Commonwealth are getting the needs they need right now.
EITC, as you know, is the Educational Improvement Tax Credit Program, and typically many organizations that work with EITC are funding programs they run all year long. We as Commonwealth Charitable Management hold funding and work on behalf of the donor when the school district needs it. So I have funding that was maybe set aside for next school year that the districts really need now. In particular, because we work statewide, our rural districts, we're looking at a need for technology. They don't have access to the internet. They don't have enough Chromebooks to go around. So what we're doing is working with those school districts. We compile all the information. What are your needs? And they are so varied. From one district to another, it's completely different what they need right now. So we're able to compile the information and work with our donors that have funding on hand right now. But I don't think that's all it's going to be is right now. Those districts are going to continue to need support into next school year. So we're working with them on plans to be able to support them so that they can close out this school year, but also plan for next one.
And again, from your standpoint, Cristine, you've seen the opportunity to be able to sort of hold dollars, yet then look at new needs. So one of the pieces that I would, again, suggest to companies out there is learn more about the EITC program. Gene Brady can help us a lot when it comes to the Neighborhood Assistance Program. These are tax credit programs that the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania has put into place. But again, Cristine, I think from what I've seen with you guys, with partnering with the banks, you're really helping really bridge that gap of what companies have and how you can get it best dispersed into the community. So as I wrap up with yourself, is there anything else you're thinking that the audience needs to be thinking about from your standpoint, whether it's education or partnering with a charitable foundation?
I think both looking at the education improvement program that we utilize to support the public school districts, one of the most important things, of course, is getting more funding. We're the largest EIO organization, but there just isn't very much to go around. In addition to that, direct charitable contributions. Somebody mentioned a community foundation. That's a fantastic option. They are very informed as far as what's going on in their community. And many times, like with our foundation, you can direct your contributions. If you care about education, if you know there's domestic violence issues, work with a foundation, anybody that's doing a potential match, and I think you'll get the most bang for your buck.
I appreciate that. And again, I think that as we raise awareness, we give people the opportunity to see what they could do today. There's an immediate need. All of us, I believe, are aware that this immediate need potentially will carry over into the end of the year from a seasonal nature. But you got to start making plans today to be able to help people tomorrow. So again, Cristine, appreciate what you've laid out here today and how your organization has that fleet of foot to help aid and assist folks. We're getting some questions online, so I would encourage the participants to please send your questions in. I'll be going back and forth to the chat bar to make certain I'm addressing them. One of the questions has to do, and I'm going to probably roll this up to both Joe and Jean and Jane, because it has to do with food insecurity. I think that we know that is our biggest one. And again, I'm not certain who wants to answer this, but how do we make certain that we're placing the farmers in conjunction with the food banks? Can you tell us or educate us about how that linkage occurs so that there's not food going to waste? So maybe Jane, I'll start with you, or whoever wishes to answer.
Sure. I think that one of the things that we have, and Joe is involved and Jane with this, is the fact that we have involvement with a PASS program in Pennsylvania, that we do directly work with farmers. We have relationships with those farmers. It exists in every county in Pennsylvania. And we're looking to do more and more. Some of our donors are farmers, and right now there's farmers that have specialty items that they typically give to restaurants that they're looking for a place to go. It's why we're working with the milk industry and taking their product to make sure it doesn't go to waste, but it goes out to people. So we are trying to put things in place. We do have a history of doing that. And I would say that we're going to continue with that effort and work very strongly to make sure that that essential industry of farmers continues to thrive, and do all that we can to work closely with them during what is a difficult time for them as well.
And if I could add to that, so Gene talked about the Pennsylvania Ag Surplus System, or PASS, which is a state-funded program. And we also work with the federal government on the Emergency Food Assistance Program that works with agriculture. And we think there are going to be additional buys, specifically in the dairy industry, coming up to support fresh milk, butter, cheese, and yogurt. So we're definitely working with the federal government to tell them, like, we want these products, we need your support, and working with those ag partners as well. We also have, under Feeding Pennsylvania, a produce cooperative that works with Pennsylvania growers. And during this COVID-19 crisis, we've moved to taking the produce that would typically go to a large distribution, and we've created 50-pound boxes of produce that a family can take home. And we particularly have, it's not the growing season in Pennsylvania, but we already have one of our main potato growers donating into that process, but we also have money that we go out and make sure that they know that we're a secondary buyer. And to Gene's point, there are wholesalers in Pennsylvania whose main business has been the restaurant industry, and we've been working with them to take their surplus product and get it out to families in need. So there is a big, robust move to make sure that agriculture is number one with what we do.
Yeah, George, I might also add at a national level, so Feeding Pennsylvania and the member food banks are also part of the Feeding America National Network, which I am on a national council. And this is actually a national effort too, with the USDA and all of the 200 food banks across the country, trying to do exactly what Jane and Gene described. So it's actually a monumental effort involving hundreds of millions of dollars to try to acquire that product and either process it or to get it directly to the food banks. Our biggest challenge is the scale of the industries that have been shut down, like restaurants, like schools. As big as our charitable food network is nationally and here in Pennsylvania, we are small relative to the scale of those industries that are not using those food products. So we are trying our very best, but just know the scale of that is immense.
I appreciate those insights, Joe. And, we heard from Josh about the idea of, notifying your legislators if you see needs. And I'll come to you, Jane. There's a question here regarding, how could people in a call to action assist you and a state level or a national level with what's going on in Congress? Are there pieces that you could point us to? We're sort of familiar with the CARES or PPP, but are there pieces that are food bank, food insecurity related that could help, that we could help as a block to help you advance?
We do work with our Feeding America nationally. They have a legislative branch. We have worked closely with Secretary Perdue and the Agricultural Department. Early on, we were out there getting waivers so that we could, some of the paperwork that had to be done with individuals was waived so that social distancing could be avoided and we could safely give food to individuals in Pennsylvania. And of course, supporting efforts to try to get the food from the farms. You know, it's always been out there farm to table. It's now, because of this emergency, shifting to farm to people. So we're working to have those kind of things put in place.
I appreciate you jumping in there to help answer that question. And Gene, I want to stay with you for a moment because I know you and I were talking earlier and you had alerted us, and you're familiar with my background having been at Columbia Gas prior to Cabot and knee deep in LIHEAP. You were sharing that you believe there may be some changes coming from a statewide level as it applies to LIHEAP. Could you expand upon that, sir?
Well, there's not been a final announcement, but it's money has come in across the country with LIHEAP, additional money. And in Pennsylvania, they're working to finalize a plan. Basically, it appears that what they're going to look at doing will be to reopen the program this May, where people could come back in. And if they're in a crisis situation, they can reapply to receive additional money. Because what's happening right now is people have a hole in their budget, and what are the things that they're not paying? Well, unfortunately, things like fuel bills are one of them, and for people that have deliverable fuels, the
propane,
oil and coal in Pennsylvania. So I think it's important that that program gets back up and running. Usually, you wouldn't see that in the summer months, but I think this summer you will.
Gene, I appreciate your insights on that one, and I've been have a question that came across. It's less of a question; it's more so a statement, and it's for maybe everyone who's a speaker today. It's a situation where one of our partners, Chief, is trying to make certain that their workforce can be helpful in getting product out, because oftentimes our workers might be in that rural area of Sullivan County or Greene County, Susquehanna. And what we're seeing is there are companies trying to figure out, if we're sending our workers to do their job remotely, can they help aid and assist with a delivery of a school supply, the delivery of food, you know, whether it's from one location to another. So it's really not a question as it is to just raise your awareness to call upon our industry, because again, we are having workers who are working remotely. They're coming into a work site, but their job takes them, 30 miles into the wilderness, and they just want to know if there's anything they can do to be of assistance.
I think to go to everybody's websites, George, and to take a look at, we all would have something that would talk about volunteering, and click on that, because the importance is to get people to volunteer where they're needed and in the right numbers they're needed, so that we it's every day we're dealing with something new. It could be packing, dealing with frozen foods, dealing with products that could come in off the farm, hopefully we'll be seeing shortly. So all those things are going to take people power, people working together. They could be assured that when they volunteer, that some of the things that Joe talked about, they'll be working in a way that they'll be safe, that they'll be protected, but they're going to be helping their neighbor by coming in and volunteering.
Understood. And Gene, I want to come back to something that you've impressed upon me, as well as Joe, and I know Jane. It's the idea that what you were doing prior to COVID-19 was important work from a food insecurity, but to hear about a need quadrupling, the idea that, again, there have, from an individual basis, it's not hard to help, but from company standpoint and the like, the real call to action here is look for that opportunity to be of assistance. But when you look long term, I'm imagining for you or for Joe, I hate to even say the words, but you see this for potentially months down the line. This isn't going to end when a curve gets flattened, this is going to persist for quite some time. Am I correct in that, sir?
I don't think there's any question about it. It would appear the next phase of this, and we're anxious to get into the next phase, is going to be people when they start getting, their life starts getting back to normal, probably with social distancing and such, so living in a little bit of a different way. But what is going to be the case, if you think about this, if they've missed their paychecks for months for families, and they live paycheck to paycheck for so many of those, we're seeing those people for the first time, and their problems are not going to be over. They're going to have to make sure that their rent is paid, make sure their utilities are paid, and their other essentials that they have in life. And a lot of times the last thing that comes out of the budget in they don't have the wherewithal to take care of is food. So I think we're unfortunately we're projecting that we're going to see this in a continued way, and that we're going to have to keep up our efforts to make sure that we have proper nutrition and getting that food out to families. And I know Joe would have a lot to say on this as well.
Yeah, I mean, everything that Gene said applies here and across the state, across the country. And I think what we're all working on, George, I mean, our crystal ball is as cloudy as everybody else, but we know that we're going to be measuring this in months, perhaps in terms of elevated need, as we're all seeing the unemployment figures come out and so on and so forth. And I think the area of emerging needs, we're all watching right now for kind of hot spots. But as we move forward, certain industries are known to be impacted, but there's other industries that are also being impacted, and they have a concentration in certain areas. So both the Weinberg Food Bank and our food bank are on a key transportation corridor with a lot of warehousing and distribution, and we're not quite sure all of that will come back strong very quickly. It'll all depend on how the general economy does and how the consumer bears up months down the road. So just an example of a type of industry that hasn't received a lot of news, but that we think is going to be greatly impacted. And it's only one industry of many. So I agree with Gene. That's our national view as well. This is going to be a long recovery that has a high level of food insecurity alongside of it.
George, if I could just jump in really quickly. I've told people a couple of times this. My husband works in produce industry and unfortunately had several cases of COVID-19 a week and a half ago. And so my daughters and I had to move out of our house and move in with friends. We've been 2 weeks tomorrow out of our house. And these friends who were really nice to take us in, though, the husband owns a gym and the wife is a hairstylist, and overnight they lost all of their income. And so I think the one thing is that people like them don't necessarily think like, oh, now I'm going to go to a food bank. They're going to take the pay they have some savings. But, it was within this week that they looked at us and said to me, like, we don't have savings forever. Like, how much longer does this go on? So, we're seeing an uptick as the paycheck to paycheck people like Gene talked about, but this isn't even just paycheck to paycheck people. I mean, at some point, like we said, this could be a year or two, and some of these people who don't want to be going to a food bank and don't want to be signing up for food stamps, but at some point you've got to make ends meet, and they still have their mortgage and they still have their car payments, and these people are paying $800 a month for health insurance. I mean, the bills are still rolling in. So I think what we're providing, everybody on this call is providing, is going to become more and more serious as the months roll on.
Well, Jane, I appreciate you stepping in there. And before I wrap up, I don't have a question for Cristine or Lisa or Josh, but I do want to give you an opportunity based on what you heard. If you have, if you would, a closing thought to share with the group.
I would encourage everyone, if you're able to donate, please do. Whichever organization, or if you have a foundation, we're completely passing through all contributions, not taking any administrative fee from those contributions, and making sure that they are going exactly where you want them to go. We're all in this together, and we just want to make sure that everybody gets the assistance that they need. So thank you for doing this.
Cristine, thank you. I'm going to go to Lisa now because I do know you have something to say, Lisa.
All right. Thank you, George. Yeah, I would just like to say thank you as well. And the call was really informative. And to Jane's point with her friends that she's staying with, you know, she's saying they're thinking we wouldn't go to a food bank. That's just not what you think about. But you can imagine how stressful, with their insurance bills and everything, how stressful that is. We saw in the month of, from February to March, we saw a 40% increase in our hotline calls in March. And I think that has to do with a lot of the stress. And like Jean said, you know, this is going to go on for a long time, and we don't know what it's going to be like when we're all mobile again. So we're anticipating an influx of activity, and we do appreciate the community support. And George, you said some of the people in the industry, if they are going to remote places to work, you know, there's things besides gift cards and things. Like, we've got facilities now that are emptier than normal because of how we're doing business. We need manual labor. It's a perfect time to deep clean and do some maintenance work and things like that. So, you know, if people want to help out, I'm sure I can speak for everyone on the call. Give us a call. We'll find something for you to do. And we really appreciate the support of the community. Thank you.
No, our pleasure. Our pleasure. And that's the goal, to do that. Josh, anything last to wrap up on your end, sir?
Yeah, and let me just say how much I appreciate the work being done by the nonprofit sector right now. And then our for-profit allies like Cabot here, you know, really making sure that our message is heard. You know, donor dollars right now, I think everyone in the nonprofit sector is scared of what the next 3 months, 6 months, year looks like in terms of foundation funding, individual donor giving, event revenue, business sponsorship. I think right now, for those people that have the ability to give, please, now is the time to do so. Nonprofits have been awesome at collaborating seemingly overnight to increase efficiency in our models that already are stretched thin, but dollars right now are super, super valuable. For anyone that's into school supplies, you can donate to the Education Partnership right now on your phone. Text the word pencil to 41444. Again, that's the word pencil to 41444. And that'll go 100% to the Education Partnership and making sure that we can provide school supplies for all of our students here.
Josh, you ended on probably the best note, because what I want to make certain is that everyone, from an individual standpoint to an owner of a company or a member of a corporation, can figure out where they play in this role. And it may be very simple, just taking that phone out and texting pencil. And we're trying to raise that awareness. The Think About Energies have always been designed to raise awareness. Just cause you to pause for a moment and think about where your energy comes from. Well, now you need to think about where community comes from. We're proud to play our part as the energy industry, but it really now has to blossom. You hear the need. It's today. It's going to be tomorrow. It's probably going to be into the fall. So everyone can do something. Don't feel overwhelmed that you haven't done something yet. The opportunity is still there. So again, it's simple things like texting pencil. It's making a donation. It's thinking about gift cards. When we put the call together today, it was about raising awareness, promoting conversation, and a call to action. The call to action is now for you to realize this need's going to be here long term. You know what else is going to be here long term? This broadcast. So if you can take the opportunity and your coworker, your peer didn't have a chance to watch it, but you see someone from Education Partnership, or you learned more about Jean Brady, the benefit of this event today, it's going to be held, and then you're going to be able to rebroadcast it. So again, we want you to take this and multiply it. So again, what's the call to action? Sharing this broadcast. Get the information out to others. Maybe you didn't remember everything you heard Jane say. Maybe you don't remember the website. Well, the good news is it's all housed here. We have your emails. We'll be sending this out. But ultimately, do me a favor. Send it to 2 people. Make the awareness spread. There is a great need out here. Collectively, we can come together. We can do our piece to do good and maximize it. And hopefully you heard there are people out there doing the most good. So with that said, I'm going to wrap up my end. I have to hand it over to Matt Henderson, who's going to close us out. He's probably got some technical pieces, but Matt, your show, sir.
Thank you, George. And again, thank you, everybody. Couldn't say any better than George just did. Please share this. And on that note, we will have this out to you within the next day or so. And there's a lot of great people on the attendee list as well with your database. So we just encourage you to share that. So with that, please look for the email, and we'll house this on the website, and we get that to you shortly. And we thank you for your participation and hope everybody stays safe and continues to help do good in the community. Thank you.
Thank you, Matt. Thank you, George.
Thank you.